People need to know what is happening behind closed doors. It's a whole other world. You got people in for being drunk in public to murderers, but once they close the doors, they treat everyone like shit. All the same. Guilty until proven innocent. It's not just what happened at OPP. There's inadequate representation also. The public defender meets you at 8 a.m. and goes to trial at 10 a.m. They don't know you as a person. They're trying to move you through because they have 300 or 400 other cases that week. There is no representation. If you're indigent, you are screwed. That's the end of Mr. Norman's statement. Your Honors, I would now like to call the prosecution's first witness, Mr. Roderick Dean. Mr. Dean? And while Mr. Dean comes down here, I just want to take a moment to remind all the judges that if they do have questions during Mr. Dean's testimony, to please interrupt and pose those questions directly to Mr. Dean.
Are you going to spell his name, or are you going to have...
I was going to ask him to spell it, but I can, if that saves time, I can do it. R-O-D-E-R-I-C-K, last name D-E-A-N.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Dean.
Good morning, sir.
Could you please say your name and your date of birth and place of birth for the record?
My name is Roderick Dean. That's R-O-D-E-R-I-C-K D-E-A-N. I was born in Flint, Michigan on December 3rd, 1958.
Now, Mr. Dean, after you graduated from high school, you joined the Air Force, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you were honorably discharged?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what you did after you joined the Air Force?
Yes, sir. I returned to my home state of Michigan in Detroit and enrolled at the Michigan State Police Academy in Lansing, where after graduation from the police academy, I took a job in Jackson, Michigan at the State Prison of Southern Michigan at Jackson as a correction officer.
Your Honors, I've just been informed to ask you a question. Do we need to swear in the witness? Is that appropriate?
It would be preferred.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Dean. Could you raise your right hand, please?
Yes, sir.
And affirm that you swear to tell the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, sir.
And nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir. I affirm everything I say is true.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So after graduating from the police academy, you became a corrections officer in Michigan, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And can you tell us when you moved to New Orleans?
I moved to New Orleans in June of 2003.
Mr. Dean, I'd like to direct your attention to the events of the morning of August 11th, 2005. Could you please tell this tribunal what happened to you that morning?
Yes, on the morning of August 11th, 2005, myself and my 21-year-old male friend were walking to breakfast at McDonald's on South Claiborne Avenue at the intersection of Calhoun in the uptown neighborhood of New York, a affluent, majority white neighborhood. As we...
I'm sorry, you said New York. You mean New Orleans.
I'm sorry, I meant New Orleans. Excuse me, I'm kind of a little nervous. Yes, we were walking to breakfast at McDonald's, and at that time, I am certified disabled as of August 29th of 2004. And I take a variety of prescription medications for my disability, life-threatening disability. And the meds are prescribed for me in different bottles and required to be taken with food. As I was walking to McDonald's to do just that with my friend, we were both approached by a white male New Orleans Police Department officer at the intersection of Calhoun and Claiborne. We were both frisked, and unbeknownst to me, my friend was found in possession of a handgun, and I was found in possession of my prescription medications. Due to the escalation of that arrest, because my friend had a weapon, we were both handcuffed. I was handcuffed next to him, and the white officer proceeded to use the handgun and to beat my friend, upside the head, and he defended himself, and an altercation ensued, and my being handcuffed to him, I was jostled around against the police car and so forth. I was arrested alongside him and charged with possession of hydrocodone, and trespassing.
And you were on a public street, is that right?
Yes, sir, I was on a public street.
And you have a prescription for hydrocodone?
Yes, sir, I do have a prescription for hydrocodone.
And you, in fact, did not have any hydrocodone with you that morning?
I, in fact, did not have hydrocodone in my possession that morning. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just for the record, was your friend also African American?
Yes, my friend also was African American.
And the police officer was?
Was white.
Okay. Can I direct your attention to the evening of August 11th when you were taken to Orleans Parish Prison? Can you describe for the Tribunal what happened upon your arrival?
Upon my arrival at Orleans Parish Prison, I was processed and placed into general population, and met at some point thereafter with a public defender to explain the charges and to explain that based on my the fact that I received my medication and my doctor's and medical treatment at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky, that all of my medical prescriptions and records were being held there, and I was offered a medical release of information form by which they could obtain my prescription profile, outlining and detailing each of the medications for which I was prescribed, and also, in fact, for which I was in possession of at that time.
So you told them that you were a veteran. You told them that you had a prescription for various medications, and you told them that that was available at the Veterans Hospital and could be sent to you. And what was the response?
Yes, I did, and basically, the response was just that fill out the release of information. They were going to fax it to the VA hospital in Louisville, and obtain my prescription profile, faxed back to them. At which point, we were going to go before the judge, present my prescription profile, and the charges would be dismissed, and I'd be free to leave.
Now, when you were brought into the Orleans Parish Prison, because of your disability, were you allowed entry into the medical unit?
No, not at that time. From August 11th, the day of my arrest, until August 26th, the Friday before the hurricane, I did not receive medication. I was in general population, and I was filing grievances through the chain of command to access my medications, so that I would, be able to, live as I'm supposed to.
And the medication that you need is for serious illnesses, life-threatening illnesses, and denial of that is dangerous to your ability to survive. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you eventually get the medication that you needed?
Well, kind of, sort of. I got some, but not everything. I take a variety of prescription meds, including one IV injection per week. I did not get anything until August 26th, the Friday before the hurricane, which I got an injection, and I got removed at that time from the general population into the medical cell block, and at that point I was allowed to access my prescription diet, for my conditions, and my medications that I was prescribed for, minus the hydrocodone narcotic.
I'm sorry, and the medications that you received were actually the same medications you were in possession of at the time of your arrest?
Absolutely, yeah. Each of the medicines that I accessed on August 26th were the exact medications in my possession at the time of my arrest.
Did you have any side effects from the injection that you received?
Yes. The injection that I received has severe side effects, which cause basically to be bedridden and wheelchair-bound for 3 to 4 days as the effects of the medication wear off, and that's why I also prescribe the painkiller hydrocodone to counter the effects of the injection side effects.
Can you tell us about the environment in the prison regarding the weather forecast around the days of Sunday, August 28th or Saturday, August 27th?
Yes, I have been watching the news, weather reports, because of my knowledge of hurricane season. So as I watched the weather reports detailing the development of a tropical depression off the coast of Africa, later to turn into a tropical storm named Hurricane Katrina, or Tropical Storm Katrina, I continue to monitor the developments as it grew into a hurricane coming toward the United States. And the weather predictions at that time were for a Category 5 direct hit on the city of New Orleans.
And with the kind of ominous weather forecasts that were predicting a direct hit, was there any communication from the corrections officers or higher-ups in Orleans Parish Prison to you regarding, or the other inmates regarding the storm?
Yes, on I think Saturday morning it was, I think before the hurricane made landfall, the chief of the jail, along with two of his bodyguards, proceeded to enter each individual cell block and broadcast, a pep talk, like to the extent that, well, we were going to ride out this hurricane together. We were going to basically bolton down the hatches and ride this thing out together, and we were going to survive safely and intact, and everybody was going to remain safe and sound and secure.
And this reassurance took place on Sunday, or?
It was either Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I forget which. Early in the morning, on either Saturday or Sunday before the hurricane.
When was the last time that you received food before the storm?
I last got grits at 6:00 a.m. on Sunday, which would have been, I think, August 28th, 2005.
And did you receive your meds that morning?
No, I did not receive any medication at that time. The last medications I received were on Saturday before the storm. I guess that would be the 27th of August.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened later that morning, the Sunday the 28th, regarding when you were in the cell, regarding the kind of storm damage that you were observing?
Yes, as I recall, on the morning of Sunday, the 28th, I believe it was, I had my position was on the bottom of 3 tiered bunks, and early that morning, as I awakened, the 2 guys on the bunks ahead above me had felt the wall beside the bed, the concrete wall, and said that the walls were sweating. And at that point, I felt the wall beside my bed, and my wall was dry. But I reached to the bottom of my bed, and I grabbed my blanket, and my blanket was soaking wet. Later on that day, the lights had gone out, the generators, we had no electricity, the generators kicked on, and they were humming real loudly and sounding as though they were going to fail shortly, and they stayed on for a few hours and failed. The toilets in that cell stopped working in the bathroom. We had about 6 toilets. They were filled with excrement, and they backed up, and at that time, water began to enter the cell block from a corner of the room, and it just kind of just raced across the floor, and it was a brownish manure-colored water, and it just quickly, rose, and the events commenced at that point.
And was the cell locked at this time?
Yes, the cell was completely locked down.
And the representation that the corrections officers had made that morning or the previous morning regarding riding it out together, did you see any of those officers?
No, the last time I saw any staff members were Sunday morning at breakfast at 6, and I think they came around at 7 and gave some of the other prisoners in the medical unit some medications. And that was the last time that I observed any staff for 2 or 3 days.
What was the prisoners' reaction as the water began flowing into the cell block?
Well, there was pandemonium, panic, of course. The water quickly rose, and in the cell block where I was, I had just arrived on Friday, there were prisoners who had wheelchairs, and there were some who did not, they were ambulatory. And as the water rose knee-deep, and I was sitting in my wheelchair, as I am now, the water rose above my wheelchair. The people who were ambulatory stood in the water, and we screamed and banged. There's a reinforced glass wall that separates us from the staff, and they were just beating on the glass and screaming for help as the water was like knee-deep and waist-deep and rising, and the sun was about to set. And panic and fear settled in as quickly, and the guys took some brooms and buckets and tried to break down the wall, and took wheelchairs and tried to break down the glass in futile attempts. And they just kind of whirled themselves out, and it was kind of frantic, and people was like, well, nobody's helping, and I just kind of grabbed out my wheelchair and tried to break down the glass.
And you mentioned that the power had gone out. Was there any light in the cell as the sun was setting?
No, it was completely dark, and you could see nothing. I could not see my hand in front of me, in which time we were trying to gauge the depth of the water and to escape the water. My bunk was on the bottom. It was underwater. It was completely submerged. We all quickly retreated to the second and third tier bunks, and the people who had cigarette lighters were flashing cigarette lighters to illuminate the cell and see how much water had risen to which bunk, as the next bunk to abandon the second bunk and to the third bunk and so forth.
How high did the water rise in the cell?
It rose up above my neck by the time I was evacuated. By the time I was able to leave the cell block, it was over 5 feet.
Were you concerned about your ability to survive this experience?
Yeah, as I stood on, I finally got up to the third bunk in the pitch darkness, and we were screaming, and I was just kind of plotting a escape route of swimming, and I was looking around to see, should I swim from my bed or from the middle of the room, which had higher access to the ceiling and more room to swim and air to breathe. But it was like a futile effort on my part, and at that point, the walls were just closing in, and I just saw my body I saw a vision of my body floating in that water, and visions of my life flashing before me, and just seeing myself in that water dead. And at that time, I just kind of like prayed out loud to God, and everybody was doing the same thing, and that water level at that point had ceased to rise at that moment.
So the water entered, you testified that the water entered the cell about Sunday morning. When did the water stop rising?
It was late Monday night.
And during that entire time, you had been left kind of abandoned?
Right. I had seen no staff during that entire time.
When was the next time you saw the staff?
It was later on that night, once the water had stopped rising.
That night is Monday night?
Monday night, yeah.
The 29th?
Yeah, a skeletal crew came in rubber clothing and flashlights, and fumbled with the keys in the water to override the power hydraulic door locking opening system, and managed to drop the keys in the water and retrieve the keys and get the doors open, and managed to pull us out of the water. I tried to take my wheelchair. I was told I could not take my wheelchair. I either had to just stay with it and drown, or leave it behind. And I was very weak and unable to evacuate the cell block alone. And two of the people who were in the cell with me knew my condition from being with me, and proceeded to help me swim and drag me through the water out of the cell block.
Where were you taken to from the cell block?
At that time, we were taken from the first floor medical unit all the way to the gymnasium on, I think, the second or the third floor at the same building, which was dry, but it was no ventilation and air. It was very hot and humid, and we had no bathrooms. We had no change of clothes, no beds, no food, no water, no medicine. And we were just kind of like placed in there. And we had nowhere to use the bathroom and stuff, with maybe 100 guys all together. And we just spent that last night there together, not knowing what was going to happen. And when we kept banging on there was a stairwell leading to the gym, and we came down the stairwells and banged on the door to ask for some bathroom facilities. And after a matter of hours, the door opened, and a black garbage bag was tossed inside, and we were told to defecate and urinate into the garbage bag. And we remained there overnight.
And during this time, no food and no water and no medicine was provided to you?
That's correct. No food, no water, no medicine was given.
Can you tell us about how you were able to leave the gym and when that was?
It was the next morning when we were able to evacuate. I think that may have been Tuesday. And they announced we were going to evacuate the women first, and then, the medical unit and so forth. We had priority. They came in boats, took us out of there in boats. Again, we went back through the water in our still drenched clothing, foul-smelling clothing. And we went into these boats, and we rode about a half mile to a dry overpass about a half mile from the jail. And we were there in the overhead direct sunlight. It was like 100 degrees that day and 100% humidity. And I remained on that overpass until just about sundown. as we waited for prison buses to arrive from around the United States to evacuate us to state facilities and federal facilities.
So the day you were on the overpass was Tuesday, August 30th, 2005?
Yes.
And you had not received any food during your experience in the cell or your experience in the gymnasium, and your last meal was Sunday morning, which was the 28th.
Yes, and I also did not receive medicine. Right.
Can you describe the situation on the overpass?
It was very chaotic. You know, I saw people that were collapsing from heat exhaustion, the various maladies, seizures, the whole, you know, gamut of, conditions and stuff, collapsing. We stood out there in the hot sun, and we were told, you know, we were maced because we were told to sit in place on the ground, and there were thousands of us. And we had foul-smelling clothing. We were dehydrated. We were emaciated. We were weak. We were sick. And we couldn't move. We couldn't go to the bathroom. They had family members across from us watching, and female family members, parents, grandparents, kids, children, wives. And so we had to remain out there all day until these prison buses came. And they went on to proceed. They were drinking and eating in front of us, and we were just basically begging for food and water and medicine. And we were told that the buses were going to have food and water on them, and we told them we had to use the restroom into the water below us. And as we sat there all day, and once we urinated or defecated into the water, we were shot with mace and bean bags and so forth for urinating and defecating in front of the presence of their wives and mothers into the water below us. And
you said they were eating and drinking. Can you elaborate as to who the they is?
The guards for OPP, they had fruits and bottled water and various things like that.
So the guards had food and water, and you were able to observe them eating and drinking, and at the same time you were denied access to that food and water?
Yes, when we asked for it, we were shot with mace and tear gas, and we were told that the buses, when they arrived, were going to have food and water on them.
Now, you mentioned mace and tear gas, and you also mentioned the bean bags. Just because we have an international audience, could you explain what a bean bag is?
Yeah, it's, you know, just like a non-lethal type weapon, a shotgun or something, and it's just like a little cloth bag filled with like BBs or something like that.
And people were shot with that for moving or for attempting to use the restroom or protesting not having food or water.
Right, exactly, yes.
You mentioned the buses came. Could you explain how the system was devised as to how to get folks onto the buses?
Yeah, the priority, the delegation, the responsibility for boarding the buses was, we were told the priority was going to be given to the medical prisoners first, myself. However, the responsibility for loading the buses was delegated from the guards to the prisoners, the trustee prisoners. And the trustee prisoners proceeded to load their friends that they knew from the streets or from the jail onto the buses in place of the medical prisoners that were, were supposed to have received priority. So as the initial buses first came and loaded up, they were being loaded up by they were filled with healthy prisoners, as we were overlooked. And I kept trying to get the attention of the guards to tell them that, these trustees, these prisoners, were not loading the sick prisoners first. They were loading their friends first, and we were being overlooked, and the buses were just leaving without us. I had just gotten to that medical unit, so I didn't have the outer medical clothing on that identified me as a medical prisoner. I was mainly, by my clothing, identified as a general population prisoner, but I had medical clothing, underclothing on. So as I got more and more frantic and emaciated and dehydrated as I saw these buses going without me, I kept trying to get the attention of the guards, and finally I just pulled my pants down and pulled out my underwear and showed, hey, I am a prisoner, a medical prisoner, and these guys are getting their friends on first. And so at that point, around around dusk, the guard ordered me to be loaded onto a bus, and I was able to evacuate the roadblock right around sundown.
And where did the bus take you?
We first went to Hunts Corrections, where I spent about a total of an hour. We got off the bus in Hunts. Then we went to the prison yard there in Hunts. We were seated in a grassy field, several hundred of us, and at that time we were given a stale bologna sandwich. The bread was too hard to chew. I just ate the meat, and a stale piece of cake, and 1/2 of a Dixie cup of water.
And having been dehydrated, as you stated, did you protest the amount of water that you received?
The group of hundreds of us, we were pretty much going to riot. We had begun to riot because we wanted more water, and we were just unable to go any further with that one half a Dixie cup of water in us. And we just really rebelled and stood up in protest. And the warden finally averted the riot by ordering that we receive all the water that we wanted. And I sat there in that field, and I think I drank maybe a gallon or more of water at that time. And once we were saturated with water, given all the water we could stand for the duration of about an hour, then we boarded buses and went to different evacuated prisons from there.
And you were promised that there would be food and water on the buses that originally took you from the overpass. Was that there?
No, that was a lie. It was a broken promise. We got on the buses, and they knew nothing about food and water being promised to us.
So the first food and water you had was at the facility you just described, at the Hunt facility? Well, where were you taken after that?
I was taken northern Louisiana and Winfield, Louisiana, to Wynn Correction Center.
And can you describe your experience there?
When we got off the buses, we had no records, medical records, legal records identifying our cases or our status or whatever, and so we were just basically anonymous prisoners to the staff and warden. So as we unloaded the buses there and they received us, we met with the warden and stuff, and he said, well, I don't know who any of you all are, but you all are from New Orleans, and without any information about you, we're going to treat all of you as though you're convicted prisoners. And basically that was how we were treated during my near 4-month confinement there.
Now, you mentioned that you have a serious medical condition that requires medicine, and did you receive any of that medicine either at Hunt or at Wynn?
No, while I was at Hunt, I asked for my hydrochlorothiazide for high blood pressure, and I was told, pray to your God. When I got to Wynn, there was a facility that was not equipped to receive medical prisoners, which we were. And but they attempted to accommodate us and said, well, if you can you tell us the dosage and the name of your medicines, we can access it for you. So those of us like myself who could was able to get some of my medicines, but not all. They said they didn't have anything at first, so they took the names of the medicines that I described to them and ordered those meds. I didn't get the narcotic hydrocodone. They were unable to offer me the weekly injection of Pegasus and Peg interferon, and I did get some of the medicine, the oral meds, but I didn't get all of them, and I'm supposed to take combination cocktail meds. I didn't get all the combinations. I either got partial, sometimes 1, 2, or 3 of a combination dosage. Sometimes those meds were required to take with food, with a meal, breakfast and dinner. Sometimes I didn't get an evening dose until 10 o'clock at night when there was no food offered past 4 p.m. And we were told that, I was told that they didn't know how long I was going to be there, so they were only going to order medicine for a 30-day supply. So every 30 days, I ran out of medicine for about a week. I never even got all the full complement. And the first delivery of the second month supply was delayed by a week because of Hurricane Rita. So 30 days after I got there, and they ordered, and I ran out of my first month supply, the delivery trucks bringing the resupply was delayed by a week by Hurricane Rita. And every 30 days, it was the same situation when they ran out of medicine. You
mentioned that you knew the names of all the medicines that you needed. Were there other prisoners who either didn't speak English or who didn't know the names of their medicines who weren't able to get them?
Yes, many prisoners were unable to identify their medications by name and dosage, and those prisoners were unable to get any medicine at all.
Now, during this time, Mr. Dean, did you have any access to counsel or to a court?
At that time, no, I had no access to any court or any lawyers at all. I had obtained a lawyer on the outside, and he came to visit me, and his visitation was refused by the warden.
Were you able to contact any family members to alert them to your situation?
Finally, in late September, we were given stamps and envelopes and stuff, and I was able to write my family who lives in Louisville, Kentucky. I wrote my mom, and my sister wrote me late in September, early in October, and sent me a copy of the minutes from a criminal court case in New Orleans where the chief judge had ordered that all detained prisoners who had not been arraigned prior to Hurricane Katrina must be arraigned or released within 10 days of his order on dated October the 8th, 2005. And I received that letter from my sister, and I proceeded to write to the chain of command at WIN, to Mary Harris, the records secretary clerk, asking and demanding my release.
And when were you finally released?
December the 8th, 2005.
And that's almost 4 months after your original arrest?
Yes, sir.
After you were released, could you describe the experience of being released?
On the morning of December the 8th, 2005, at around 4:30 in the morning, I was awakened by the guard kicking the foot of my bed. I woke up and asked, and the guard said to me, "Are you Roderick Dean?" I says, "Yes, I'm Roderick Dean." He says, "Gather your belongings. You're free to go. The bus is going to transport you back to OPP, Orleans Parish Prison, and you're going to be discharged from there." It was a half hour before we ate breakfast. I hadn't eaten anything since 4 p.m. the previous day. And I says, "Well, it's a 6-hour drive back to New Orleans. How about can I go and eat breakfast and then get on the bus?" And I was told no, the bus was running, and I had to go get on the bus. At that time, I boarded the bus and came back to OPP around 1 in the afternoon, where I was put in a holding cell and told that I was being processed for discharge. I was discharged around 5 p.m. on the evening of December 2008. I got no food water on that day at all, and then they released me on the evening of December the 8th, 2005. I had no food, no water, nowhere to go, and when I got out, the city was under a curfew and under martial law, and I was just totally lost and overwhelmed.
Were you given any money upon your release?
No, no money.
Did you inquire as to whether or not you'd have to appear in court to contest your charges?
Yes, as I was discharging from OPP, I asked the guards, I says, "Well, do I ever get to go to court and, have an arraignment for these charges?" And I was told that there were no charges. Charges were dismissed. And I never appeared in front of a judge.
Mr. Dean, do you have anything you'd like to add to your experience?
Well, just that I think mine is typical of racial profiling and the general experience of African American men and the inadequate injustice system, criminal justice system that has a history in America and New Orleans and so forth, society, and it's something that I think nobody should have to go through. What was done to me denied me my access to basic speedy trial justice.
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
You're welcome.
We have another witness to call, Your Honors, unless Your Honors have a question for Mr. Dean. Okay. We'd now like to call Ms. Charlene.
I have a question.
I'm sorry.
I did have a question.
Sorry.
Mr. Dean, have you had the opportunity to receive any kind of counseling since you were released in 2005?
Well, actually, I asked the Wynn Correction Center for counseling, and they made a quasi-counseling available. But after my release from custody, I returned to the Veterans Hospital in Louisville and did undergo a counseling program at Wynn. And then when I returned to New Orleans, I did undergo some counseling here at the Veterans Administration Facility in New Orleans, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you lose any property while you endured your ordeal?
Yeah, I did lose property. I had money and clothing at Orleans Parish Jail at the time of hurricane, the time of my arrest, which I did lose, not including the my home that was flooded, destroyed in New Orleans. Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Dean, ¿existe algún proceso de demanda contra el Estado americano por su detención ilegal?
We have a translator.
Somebody translation, please.
Yes, I am. I have a pending lawsuit in U.S. District Court, Eastern District of Louisiana, naming as defendants the Sheriff of Orleans Parish, all the way up to the governor, including the attorney general, the district attorney, the police chief, now the current police chief, the one that was on duty during Hurricane Katrina.
Eu, na época, você depois que era deficiente, usava cadeira de roda, se eu entendi bem. Que tipo de deficiência, além do medicamento, tinha na época?
Repete de novo, por favor, a pergunta que vai ser traduzida. Por favor. Vai repetir a pergunta, por favor.
Sim. Durante o depoimento, ele disse que tinha cadeira de roda. Além do medicamento, que tipo de deficiência ele tinha na época?
So, he's asking which other medical problem beyond the medication you are suffering during the period.
Alors,
My-
quels problèmes médicaux avez-vous souffert?
What are my medical disabilities?
Yeah, which kind of medical disabilities that you had during the period? That's the question.
Quel type de
Diabetes,
diabète?
high blood pressure,
Alors, le diabète,
hepatitis C, AIDS.
le diabète, la tension.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
You're welcome.
Our next witness is Charlene Smith. Ms. Smith? I'll spell Ms. Smith's name for the record. Charlene, last name Smith. Ms. Smith, do you swear to tell the whole truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please state your name, your date of birth, and your place of birth for the record?
My name is Charlene Smith. I was born in San Pedro, California. My birthday is 12/7/61.
Ms. Smith, could you say a little bit about your job prior to Hurricane Katrina?
Yes, I was working for Orleans Parish School Board. At the time, I was in child nutrition.
And could you share with us what happened on Saturday, August 27th, as you were aware of the arriving storm?
I decided to leave, and I was responsible for my daughter, my children, my daughters, my granddaughters, my son-in-law, and my brother.
And you said you decided to leave. How did you leave?
We left in my brother's van. We gassed the van up, the whole family.
And you drove from New Orleans?
We drove from closest hotel we can get was in Arkadelphia, Arkansas.
And how long a drive is that?
18 hours.
When did you arrive in Arkansas?
Sunday, it had been Sunday night around 10.
And the hotel in Arkansas, did you have to pay for that hotel?
Yes. I paid 3 days. And when the storm hit, and they say that when the storm hit, the day that I was in the hotel, that was my last time I paid. I couldn't no longer pay more days because I was the only support for my family. Excuse me, I'm sort of nervous, but I was the only support for my family.
And you paid out of your pocket at the hotel?
Yes.
Did you have an ATM card?
Yes, I had an ATM card that for some reason, I had went to the bank before I left New Orleans, and I had X amount of dollars on me, enough to pay hotel fee for a while, for the 3 days. But I had a defect in my ATM, my card, because it was from Orleans Parish School Board Credit Union.
And did you receive any government assistance to help you paying for the hotel at this time?
No. I had none.
So what did you do after the 3 days at the hotel when your money ran out?
I spoke with, because I was traveling with some more people. My son-in-law, his mother and father said they knew a church that we can go to in Hot Spring, Arkansas. So we went to Hot Spring, Arkansas to the church.
And how long did you stay in Arkansas?
We stayed in Hot Spring, Arkansas for about 3 weeks to 4 weeks.
And then where did you go?
Then we left and went to Dallas.
And where did you stay in Dallas?
We stayed in the hotel downtown in Dallas.
Now, while you were staying in Arkansas and while you were staying in Dallas, did you attempt to contact FEMA or the Red Cross or any other aid organization?
Yes. I went to FEMA and explained I had to give all the information I gave them. And they said, well, I should hear something from them within 2 to 3 weeks. But when I did hear something from them to 2 to 3 weeks, they had sent a check to New Orleans.
They sent your relief check to your house in New Orleans that you evacuated?
Yes.
Did you explain to them that you wouldn't be able to get the check there?
I explained to them that I'm not in New Orleans. And they stated to me there, well, Ms. Smith, we cannot do anything for you until we get a trace on that check.
What about your paycheck? Were you getting paychecks sent to you?
Well, Orleans Parish School Board sent us a check through the Western Union. It was not my whole entire pay. They sent me $89.
They sent you a paycheck for $89?
$89.
After your 2 weeks in Texas, can you tell us where you moved?
I went to Baton Rouge to help my mom out. Because at that point, I found out that my place was not underwater and didn't have any damage. So my mom had lost everything. So my mom was in Baton Rouge, and I went to Baton Rouge to be with my mom. I met my mom at the hotel in Baton Rouge. Was the Michael Tell Hotel in Baton Rouge, and that's where my mom and my kids and I lived in the hotel there up until November when I arrived back home.
And so you arrived back in New Orleans in November of 2005?
Yes.
Did you go to FEMA about getting aid?
Yes, that's when at the time I went to the school, Laurel Elementary School, and FEMA was set up there, and I explained to them what happened, but they told me they still have to put a trace on the check, so I didn't receive that check till January 2006.
So you got your FEMA check on January 2006?
Yes.
Did it cover the expenses that you had to endure?
No. And due to, I didn't have a property loss or anything, I didn't receive anything else.
Now,
but the $4,000 that they gave.
Ms. Smith, while you were evacuated, obviously you had to spend money on gas, spend money on food, spend money on hotel. What did you do after your money ran out?
I had checks, my own personal checks. I went to Walmart. I spent almost $1,000 with buying food and clothing for my family.
And was that the first time that you'd ever written a check for
funds you didn't have? I never wrote a bad check before in my life up until that time.
And these items that you were purchasing were essential survival items?
Yes, food and clothing.
After you wrote the checks for those funds, did you attempt to contact Walmart?
I contacted Walmart in October 2005 to explain to them what I did. I had wrote bad checks, and I didn't have them. Well, the money was messed up. At the time they couldn't get the money out of the credit union because at the time we didn't know what to do, how to get our money out of Orleans Parish School Board Credit Union. I didn't know what to do, so I explained to them I'm going to pay those checks as soon as I get some money to pay those checks, and they said okay. I spoke with the lady, offhand I can't remember her name, but the supervisor over at Walmart where I wrote the checks at, and she told me whenever I get the money to pay the checks, just address it to her and attention to her, and she'll take care of it for me.
And you contacted Walmart when? Do you remember?
When I came home, when I first got, it was in 2006 when I received the money, because I started working and then I received the money from FEMA I got 2 separate money orders at the corner store, Juice Grocery Store, for $500 a piece, plus I had to pay some late fees, so totally it was like a little over, $1,300.
And you took the initiative to contact them and let them know about the bad checks that you had written.
Yes, well, she explained to me to where to send the check and attention to check and put, she told me to put, what to do with the checks and the process of sending it. And I mailed both checks.
And after you mailed the checks, did you